Immigration New Zealand has been told to reverse its newfound tough stance on partnership visas at the request of the Prime Minister. The changes to the policy, which have hit the Indian community particularly hard, have led to protests and some people resigning from their long-time Labour Party memberships. Others have vowed not to vote for Labour in next year's election. New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters claimed credit for the changes, but Jacinda Ardern has put a stake in the ground, telling government officials to return to allowing exemptions for couples in arranged marriages. Our political reporter Jo Moir has the story.
A change in approach by immigration officials to partnership visas, insisting that couples have to spend time living together in order to be eligible, means Indians in particular are having a much harder time bringing their spouses to New Zealand. After people spoke out about the tougher stance, New Zealand First MP Shane Jones lashed out at the Indian community, last month telling them to catch the next flight home if they didn't like the immigration policy here. New Zealand First Leader and Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters came into bat for his colleague, saying last month that his party was responsible for the crackdown on the visas.
Well, if you want to say, has New Zealand First had an influence on trying to tidy up the quality of information on which Immigration Department relies, the answer is profoundly yes.
He says it's simple. Arranged marriages are not a legal partnership.
It's clear as daylight. They're not partners. Full stop. I mean, that's what the rule says. You've got to be a partner. If they're not a partner, how can you construct them as a partner when they're not?
Mr Jones's rhetoric has ramped up considerably in recent weeks. Today he responded to claims from the Indian community that he was racist by describing it as a Bollywood overreaction. The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has called time on the row. She says immigration officials made the changes without Cabinet authority and now she wants it changed back.
That was changed as a result of Immigration New Zealand officials changing the way they were operating. They did not do that under the authority of Cabinet. My expectation is that we'll reverse back to the status quo in the way it was operating before.
Mr Jones had no idea the policy was being reversed, but says it won't stop him.
Just because we've signed up to the coalition agreement doesn't stop me, as a retail politician belonging to a 9-person caucus, continuing to evolve our thinking in relation to immigration.
The Immigration Minister Ian Lees-Galloway says his officials made the change without telling him.
Well, it would have been helpful to know what they had in mind, but they have given me an explanation, which is that they felt making this change brought consistency to their decision making and made those decisions align with government policies.
He says Mr Peters' claims he influenced the change don't tally with what his officials have told him. And he offered one explanation for that.
But I know we've been making a lot of immigration decisions at Cabinet in the last few months.
So he got confused?
Well, again, it's a good question to ask the Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr Lees-Galloway says he had nothing to do with the changes that resulted in a huge backlash from the Indian community.
Well, I'll tell you where the Ian Lees-Galloway fingerprints are, cleaning it up.
The Prime Minister and Winston Peters are now at odds.
There are some areas where you hear opinions from New Zealand First MPs that are not the opinions of Labour MPs or Green MPs.
But it's more than an opinion. It's problematic when the Deputy Prime Minister is claiming to be responsible for a change in Immigration New Zealand policy and you say that's not accurate.
I've just explained the scenario.
Mr Peters has just arrived back at Parliament this afternoon after spending 2 days in the Auckland High Court, where he's pursuing a privacy lawsuit against former national ministers and high-profile public servants. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jo Moir.